Real quick, before we get into the show, I wanted to share a new service called Getita that Ken and I have been using that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?
Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast, a show for anyone who wants to be their own boss. If you sit in a cubicle every day and know you are capable of more, then join us. This show will help you build a business and grow your passive income streams in just a few short hours per day. And now your hosts, serial entrepreneurs David Schomer and Ken Wilson.
Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Carlos Alvarez, who is a well-known speaker, podcaster, as the founder of Wizards of Ecom podcast and the founder of the largest Amazon sellers meetup group in the world, located in Miami, Florida. For those of you who missed it, Carlos was a guest on our show all the way back in April of 2021. This episode remains one of our most downloaded episodes of all time. In this episode, Carlos shares his beginnings in entrepreneurship, where he details one of the most epic business stories we have ever heard. We do not want to spoil the story for you, so you should listen to episode 19. However, I will mention that it involves millions of live insects in his apartment, an unsupportive landlord, an eviction, several struggles, yet ends with an amazing outcome. In today's episode, we will be diving into Carlos' business ventures in 2023 and discussing how he is evolving with the ever-changing landscape of e-commerce. Welcome back to the show, Carlos.
Thank you so much for having me back, and I loved that intro.
Absolutely. So it's been a while since we've talked. What's been going on with you, and where are you focusing your energy in 2023?
My God, everything. Like, things seem to just be happening so much faster, but I would say starting with some of the broad strokes with it. So still selling, which is great. I don't ever see myself stopping the actual selling. Some of my motivations for selling have changed. I exited 3 of my brands in a roll-up in the beginning of last year, I think right before what we could safely call a great pulling back from aggregators. How about that? So I was able to exit. I was able to get the money up front, thankfully. And yeah, those are the broadest ones. Still happily married, still, a super grateful father, and love everything ecom.
Awesome. The last time we talked, we focused a lot on Amazon, and I know that you are very heavily focused there. And so from our standpoint, it feels like things are getting tougher and tougher. We've got rising fulfillment fees, capacity restrictions, Chinese competitors, supply chain issues, PPC costs on the rise. I could go on and on. What are your thoughts here? What are you doing to combat those challenges?
So, first of all, everyone's dealing with that. I don't have a magic bullet to just deal with those things and not. Some of the ways that I'm dealing with it is I'm focusing more on higher ticket price products, so that I think that's the best way to combat the rising cost of PPC, which there's really no way to control that. You can't stop doing PPC by design, but just higher ticket items seem to absorb a lot more. I like doing a lot of content creation. So for brands, and what that really looks like for me lately is being able to drive a lot of traffic off Amazon to Amazon. And it used to be this thing where it was like, man, it's just cheaper to just run Amazon ads. Well, that's changing a lot. So the cost that it takes, the learning curve that's involved with just like a more robust content creation process. Heck, with the rollout of ChatGPT and AI, like that eliminates some of the overhead that you'd have in trying to pull off content at scale. That's been a big priority as well. Amazon PPC costs, again, going up, have a lot to do with now why Google Ads to Amazon is such a sexy thing. So I'm doing a lot more Google Ads to Amazon stuff. And yeah, if I'm looking for a product now, I'm going to say I want a higher ticket item. And if it's not a higher ticket item, then it's something that has a long lifetime value. So I'm thinking this is not just going to be an Amazon play. At some point, it's going to be off Amazon. But either way, the cost to acquire a customer is a real thing. My margins are going to be a little less if I'm not on a higher ticket product. So if that's the case, I want to make sure this person keeps buying from me over and over. And this time I don't have to pay to acquire them. So I would say like those are the main points of how I'm combating it.
Awesome. So a couple of things you said there, I want to dive into a little bit more. So when we talk about higher ticket items, are we talking 50 to 100, 100 to 200? What kind of seems to be the sweet spot there?
Definitely over 50, but I would say over $100 is a real sweet spot. Yeah, it's still at a very, very sweet spot. I mean, assuming your product cost is not $85, over $100, and there's a lot of products out there that you could sell for over $100 that you can get for 20, 30.
Okay. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes higher ticket items are larger. So have you been playing in the oversized space at all?
I like the oversized space. I mean, I don't like say oversize or die, but I'll tell you what, if somebody wanted to approach private label and sourcing and didn't have the time to go through all these courses and all this other stuff, I would tell you the quickest path to like finding a product that fits is show me an oversized product or show me a fragile product or show me an oversized fragile product. Like if you just take into consideration the packaging and everything else that's needed to protect it in the case of being fragile, or deal with oversize. It's higher fees, but you also sell it for more. You have significantly less competition.
I really like that. And one thing that I've noticed in a lot of courses, they will teach product $20 or under, fits in a backpack. And I think as a result, it's a super competitive space. You've got a lot of new sellers there. And when I look at some of the first products that we launched, they were in that neighborhood. And so I really like that. Another thing I want to dive into is off Amazon content. So two things here. So you mentioned Google Ads. Can we kind of talk through what are some off Amazon channels that you're using? And then can we talk about the type of content? Is it blogs? Is it videos? What type of content seems to be working best for you?
And all of it. I've really had my toes in the content creation space for a long time. The big change for me is not embracing content creation, but rather just stepping on the gas a little more and being direct with it. Something else I've noticed, and a lot of people I know that I've just kind of grew up with in the space through the years, a lot of us seem to be like treating even an Amazon business, almost in talking about it when it comes to content, almost as if we're saying all businesses should consider themselves almost like a media business. In a way, it's a leap, but you consider yourself almost like a media business when it comes to creating content. I think the people that do that really well are going to excel. Some people do it and they just stick to YouTube, for example. But if you're doing that, say on YouTube, but you're also considering, here's an example. So there's a podcast, I don't know if you listen to it, I think it's amazing, called Shopify Masters. There was a show on there, I don't know if you heard the episode, where it was this guy, he created this YouTube channel, I think like 1 million subscribers, right? But you don't have to be at 1 million. And his thing was he would just like go up to people on the boardwalk or wherever and say, I'm gonna let you smell 2 colognes and you tell me which one you like better. And I think in this case, since it was colognes, he asked more women than men, and then the women would kind of weigh in and say like, hey, which one they like better and why. And he just did this. He did these videos and people thought it was super cool to get people's reaction, especially when it was like, oh, he gave this reaction. So he grows this channel nowhere near 1 million and decides, I'm going to come out with my own line of cologne. And based on all this feedback and all these like cologne profiles, I'm going to share that with people who make this. And I'm going to say, come up with a cologne that would be the perfect cologne for the office that says like maybe available, but professional. And it's like, yeah, all this other stuff. He creates this. Can you guess how much he spends in ads every month to sell his colognes? And he's an 8-figure business. So could you take like a rough guess?
8-figure business. I'm going to guess somewhere because you brought this up as an example, I'm going to think maybe near zero, but on the surface,
Zero.
I would get it's zero.
It's zero in ads. So I don't think I have the sauce to like get that to happen, but you know what? I want to trend in that direction. So with content, embracing video a lot, embracing a lot of blog content. I would say my like sexiest channel for content creation is actually email newsletters.
Okay.
So email newsletters are phenomenal. They let you incorporate, like normally if you have a physical product, it's like I have a product, I can only stay in this lane and I sell a product. But if you have a product, and for simplicity's sake here on the show, let's just say it's a cooking, let's use a garlic press, right? So you have the garlic press. You're obviously not going to write articles about how your garlic press is made. No one's going to subscribe to that newsletter, but you could come up with a recipe newsletter, which you'd have to get jazzier than that. But if you did, all of a sudden now your newsletter opens up to other monetization opportunities, which can help fuel your business. Like you're running something like that. I bet you somebody who has a NutriSense, like they're going to want one of these like constant glucose monitoring things that go on the back of your arm. They're going to want to advertise there because the type of food that you're talking about, and like like, man, that's our avatar. So it opens the door for you to monetize in different ways. It forces you to collaborate with other people in your industry in creative ways. And when you're in that collaboration, it turns into like hey, I got this product. You mind pumping it out to your audience? You mind if I got this? It becomes a much easier conversation because you're just perceived differently. A lot of times you say, oh, I'm an Amazon seller. It's like, oh, I just got this visual of you in your mom's basement behind the computer, plugging away at your keyboard. Content in that regard is super important for me.
Definitely. I really like that. When we talk about off Amazon, when you initially said that, my mind immediately went to Walmart and our own website. When you talk about off Amazon, what are you referring to, and what do you think presents the best opportunity?
Currently, off Amazon for me has been, I don't want to be a hypocrite here, so has been other marketplaces. I really drank the Kool-Aid when I started. And again, it was a different time. We're talking about over 15 years ago. So I really drank the Kool-Aid on this was a thing back then. Don't have your own website. The way to succeed is get really popular on these marketplaces. And then these big box retail stores like Walmart and everything, they're going to reach out to you and they're going to want to carry your products in the store. And that is how you get rich. We went out of our way to make sure there was nothing on our sites that said add to cart or anything like that. And we did that for years. So much so that we got in those stores. We actually really built out a strong model of wholesaling. So it's really weird. It's like we have this Amazon listing, it's ranking, we know how to rank it. And then it was like, we were really hurting on cash flow and was like, you know what? It would be nice to just flip this whole thing really fast before it leaves the port and then reorder more and take advantage of volume discounts. So we would find people that are Amazon sellers and say, hey, look, this thing's ranking. I speak the language. I know why it's ranking. I'm going to keep it ranking. Do you want to make a little vig on this? Do you want to resell it at this price and you'll make a profit of blank? But you need to buy like 600 units. I promise I won't have more than 4 sellers on the listing. So I was able to ramp up really fast doing that, but I never got into the Shopifys. I never got into all that. So Shopify, WordPress, I have a lot of WordPress sites, but Shopify is a major focus of mine right now as far as off Amazon. So like if I'm blessed to come back on the show in a year, I'm probably going to tell you like, hey, this is what we're doing on Shopify.
Okay. Just so you know, you have an open invite. Anytime. We love having you on the podcast and always leave with so much wisdom. And
you guys are some of my favorite people and you have the coolest name podcast in the world. How would I not come?
Hey, thanks, man. I sure appreciate it. So just as we're talking about website traffic, we've been in our businesses, we recently hired someone really good at email marketing. We've got them hooked up with Klaviyo. And if I think of like avenues to a website, that has been our best avenue. And so we're getting to the point where I think we would prefer almost one sale on our website over 2 Amazon sales. You don't have this like looming anxiety about your account getting shut down because, unintentionally broke terms of service. And so that's something that is going to be a focus area for us as well. And so we should have a powwow in a year and see where we're at because it seems like, what we focus on tends to hopefully have good results. And so, but I have found there's a saying from the movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. It's not the case with websites. You got to drive traffic there somehow.
Emailing, like little side trip here. I don't know if you're using something, probably the hottest thing I think right now for rapidly growing an email list is something called SparkLoop. What SparkLoop will do, SparkLoop was actually just acquired by ConvertKit. So I think we're going to hear a lot from Convert. I used to use ConvertKit a long time ago. I'm a HubSpot user now, but what SparkLoop does is they're connected with all the email service providers. Like if it's an Aweber, if it's a ConvertKit, if it's a Klaviyo, whatever, they're already connected. And what they do is say somebody subscribes to Firing the Man email newsletter. The back end of this says, unless you excluded it, the back end of this says, man, if you like this newsletter, you'll love these. And it'll show 3 or 4 other newsletters that are in the same niche or complementary. So it rapidly grows your email list, like to the tune of an extra 1,000 subscribers per month. It's powerful and it's stupid affordable. So like, check it out. But sorry, I went on a little side note. I thought it was worth mentioning to a fellow email marketer.
Absolutely. No, we're just, I would say we've spent about 6 months on this and I had not heard about SparkLoop, but I know what I'm doing this afternoon. So I'm going to check that out. That's awesome. So, Carlos, in terms of networking, I would say you got to be one of the best in the industry through your meetup and through conferences and through the seller cruise, which I want to get into a little bit later. You're talking to a lot of Amazon sellers. And within that group, there's got to be some people that are absolutely crushing it, right? So what are they doing? Like, what's the smart money doing? Or what have been some things that you've noticed as you talk to the the different sellers?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. Some of the answers I don't think are going to be that obvious. And I'm part, like you said, the meetup massive community. Plus I've developed these, calling it a mastermind makes it sound like there's a process to get accepted or something like that. It's not. It's a mastermind. They're like a bunch of these mini masterminds have been joined over the years of some of the top sellers in the space. Like that's indisputable. Like that's public information, Plus just the meetup really gives me access to some of the people that it's like, you know what, in 2 years, that's going to be the top of the food chain, if you will. There's several things that like common denominators at that point that everyone is dealing with. So content creation we covered, but it's shocking how many people are saying, hey, this is what we got to do. Instead of us trying to chase down somebody on TikTok, let's just build a team and we're going to be that person that they're chasing down on TikTok. Lean operating systems. Like there's a lot of great information out there now, like Traction, Rocket Fuel and stuff like that. But having an operating system in place in your business, that actually is going to save you a lot of money and allow you to explore some frontiers you wouldn't otherwise do. Internal dev, I don't know if this is AI that has made this easier, but like building some stuff internally, not building out like a full suite, like a Jungle Scout or a Helium 10, but instead of having these 4 softwares that don't act well together, but it's kind of like, that's what we got to deal with. It's like, you know what, let's just build this out. We don't need it to look pretty. We just need it to work. So a lot more people are just building out stuff internally to help them get to the next level. Licensing is something that's really, really sexy right now, and licensing with a twist. So like licensing, I call it like licensing and licensing acquisition. So that term doesn't exist. Licensing acquisition, it's like what I call it. And it's, for me, what that is a really great example would be, you've seen Prime Water with like Logan Paul. I don't know if you followed that. Okay. So content creator knows nothing about launching a product, knows everything about building a community and a channel and creating content. Somebody decided to partner with Logan Paul, and you're not going to go out there with your new PL idea and connect with Logan Paul, but you don't need to. So they connected with Logan Paul, and now pretty much any supermarket you go into, any gas station you go into, Prime Water and now Prime energy drinks are in there. So for me, that's kind of like an acquisition of an influencer, and you're not buying their company. So that's maybe a bad description of it. I'm sure there's a better one, but what you're doing is you're saying, hey, building a big community and email list, super important. Building a channel, super important. Building a channel on all these social media platforms, super important. How long is that going to take me to do? Especially if I don't, if that's not my strong suit. Why not partner with someone? Like, why not approach somebody with a solid business idea? And I'm sure almost everyone listening to the show, it's like, you may not realize it because maybe you haven't spoke on stage, but you run circles around everyone that you're passing by every day on this topic of Amazon, including that person with 1 million subscribers on YouTube, maybe especially. So being able to go to them and say, look, you're ready to put the capital into this endeavor anyway. To go to this person and say, hey, by the way, you got to put half. Go to them and say like, hey, look, I got this idea. I want to do this. All of my people are watching your channel. Here is a generous, equity partnership as part of this. And this is like what I expect of you. It's a no-brainer. So a lot of, I don't want to say bigger sellers, but a lot of the people that we're talking about now, including myself, I'm on this mission, is doing this, not just reaching out for influencer, but almost influencer acquisition. Everyone's talking about, like, right now, some of the easiest ways to make money is just being savvier with your taxes. Hiring a tax planner. Like, that's some of the low-hanging fruit right now to get a big boost in your money. And then the final one I'd say that's very common is I feel like aggregators have done something amazing, right? And it wasn't their intention, but they did something amazing. And that is they allowed some of the sharks, in a good way, like the sharks in this Amazon space who are operators of these businesses, to validate that they're the most important piece in all of this. And you can't just get 50 businesses and throw around economies of scale terms and think that you're just going to grab some people who've never dealt with this before and scale it. That's not how it works. So now we know this. Like, it's been we were doubting. We're like, oh, they got all this money. They know what they're doing. They must know more than us. Like, let's just tap out. But now, like, wait a minute, I know how to do what you didn't know how to do, and I can acquire businesses too. So I'm seeing a lot more of these bigger sellers acquiring businesses, not turning themselves into aggregators, but instead saying like, hey, you're in my niche. That's a complementary product. I want to build out this line. It'll take me 4 years to do it, or I can acquire you.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff I want to dig into, but on the topic of kind of validating the operator, I definitely feel that way. It was about 2 years ago, back during the aggregator craze, where Ken and I had a discussion, and I said, man, there's a lot of finance bros that are good at raising capital. And in fact, I talked to several of them, and they typically came from an Ivy League background and had a background in business, but not an Amazon business or an e-commerce business. And it is different. I remember thinking like, is this my ego? Do I think I'm special? Or because I feel like I've developed a skill set here, but they seem like, I've got no Amazon experience. I'm going to go buy 50 companies and do exactly what you're doing, no problem. It just seemed to me like, man, I feel like you're going to have some issues up the road. And that was the case. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right there. Two other things I want to dig into. The licensing. You talked about a attractive equity deal. What would that be? Like what would be a real life scenario? Say I'm an influencer I'm a cooking influencer and I have 1 million subs and you're selling the garlic press and you approach me. How does that conversation go?
I'm not going to give you a fluffy answer, but every niche is different. I'll tell you like what matters, and then I'll give you the high end number, right? But how many creators are in that space? How difficult is it to get to that level? That's assigning a greater value to that person. How active is that person in their channel now, right? Is their channel on the up? Because we've seen it, like the example I like to give is Cuban cigars. Like everyone still talks about Cuban cigars, but Cuban cigars kind of stopped being really good cigars a while back, but everyone still they're smoking the label. And are they still trending up? How involved are they? How good have they been in the past anytime they have pitched a product or a service that they believed in? Because they need to be good at that. And is this product going to be a product that's going to alienate a lot of their audience? Like I don't know if you follow this YouTube channel called Yes Theory. It's an amazing channel. It's not business related. So I like anytime I'm in like my Pomodoro stuff and I need to like turn off for a second, I'll like flick that on. And they have like 6 million subscribers. And then all of a sudden somebody inside said, hey, let's monetize our channel. And they decided to come out with a course that was like $5,000 on how to create content. Their followers went berserk. They hated it. So like, what's going to be the pushback if a product comes in here? So you weigh all that. And then there is no chart at the end of this that says, well, you're a creator, you should only get blank. And creators don't go out there and say how that deal was structured and what they're getting. I've heard it from a really good authority that Logan Paul got 20%. Personally, if I was starting, I'd give 40%. Like you're going to pay that. Like it's not going to like disappear on you. Like you're talking about you have this product and all of a sudden on day one, look at Joe Rogan. And what's that supplement? I really like it. And I always forget the name of it.
Athletic Greens.
Well, Athletic Greens is one too, but he's got another one and it's a nootropic that helps you focus. I take it. It's
Alpha Brain.
Alpha Brain. Yes, I take it. It's amazing. That does that good because of Joe Rogan, right? So say you have your supplement and you have the option to get Joe Rogan, like what percentage wouldn't you give?
That's a good point. And I think one thing that I really like about this pitch is it's a percentage. And so if you flop, 40% is zero. We've approached a couple influencers in our niches and oftentimes they like a flat fee. To endorse your product, you need to pay X. And that's a risk, right? And so by entering into more of this partnership and there's a percentage, you decrease your risk. And when you're running a business, if you can find areas to decrease risk, that's a good thing. So very good. Now, one other thing that's come up a couple times during this podcast is AI. I've heard a lot of people say this is going to change the world. This is going to eliminate, X percentage of white collar jobs. And to us, I'm not sure if we've really made up our minds on how it's going to change. However, I can say I like it and I want to know more about it and I want to use it more in our business. So what are some ways that you are leveraging AI and what are your thoughts on it?
When AI first came out, I was almost offended. Like the content creator in me was a little bit offended because it was like, these people are coming up to me now in my group and saying, I'm not going to create content the way you've been talking about. I'm just going to ask this thing to spit it out. So I think there was like an immature human side of me that like knee-jerk reaction didn't like it. And then I was like, kind of like how I feel about TikTok. And I'm like, man, for a while I was like, I hope this thing goes away before my daughter's older. You know what I mean? Like I want this thing to disappear. With AI, I was like, is this thing going to go the way of like Bitcoin goes up and down? Is this a fidget spinner? Like, what is this? I think we're at a point now where it ain't going away. It's getting better. It's a reality. It's in our lives. It's going to be a major disruptor. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm so not qualified to be like the authority on it. But what I will say is, in my opinion right now, as a seller and somebody who has a massive like virtual and in-person team and being able to use it in a lot of ways, that it amplifies what's already there. So if you're a creator, you're going to be a better creator. If you were a bad, lazy creator, it's going to amplify your bad, lazy creativeness. Like it doesn't, hot topic in the Amazon space is creating Amazon listings with it. Yes. If you knew how to create Amazon listings and do keyword research, it is a dream. If you did not, solves nothing. It's just nothing. There's a lot of other cool things. I think ChatGPT is the one that we just think about the most. But like, for example, with content creation and videos, say YouTube channels. So like I'm approaching YouTube like this now. There's ChatGPT 4. I suggest everyone get that. And then something that I recently learned is there's plugins that you can add into ChatGPT 4. So you go add these plugins. So one I use is called Video Ask. And is it Video Ask or Ask Video, something like that? It's free. And what you do now is you go to your YouTube video that you're like, this is similar type of content that I want to create. I see that this one's ranking amazing. It has more views and whatever your criteria is. And you pop it in and say, hey, write me a script for this video with scenes and what's going on. And it'll do it in like 2 minutes. So it's like, wow. So I love it. I think people that have been in positions, if you've been on a writing team and you've kind of been bottom of the barrel, I do the bare minimum to get by. Yeah, I think you're out of a job. You probably should have been out of a job. It's just people didn't have time to focus on it. And you know what? You're probably going to get into something you should have been in anyway, because it obviously wasn't that job. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the amplification thing in particular is the other day, I wanted to write an email to negotiate on our prices. I know that the yen has appreciated relative to the US dollar. And I probably could have spent 2 hours figuring out the percentages and maybe making a nice graph, but I plugged that into ChatGPT and it gave me an awesome head start on an email to negotiate. And so I'm using it for little things like that. I'm curious on the listing creation, the ChatGPT is married up with Helium 10. That's what we're using. We really like that. Curious what for like listing creation, do you have any faves?
No, see, I didn't even know it was married up to Helium 10. I didn't know they had any. That's news to me. That's like, I'm jotting it down now off screen, like my hands are moving, like check this out. I can imagine how awesome that would be. I have a team of writers for listings. We got a good system in place. I guess I don't have enough trust into ChatGPT. If it was like a blog article, yeah, for sure. If it was an Amazon listing that we're going to throw a lot of ad dollars at, I guess my trust level is not there with it. And what I do love it for is creating avatar profiles before you create the listing. Like there's some cool prompts you could do to build out like, who's the buyer of this? That helps a lot in the writing process.
I have not thought about that. I really like that though. And that does help put you in the right frame of mind when you're writing listing or creating content. I'm jotting that down.
Ultimately, it boils down to it's easier to edit a rough draft than it is to start one. That's what it comes down to. Like that's why it's amazing.
Absolutely.
You don't want to die on a blank screen.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Firing the Man podcast. This recording with Carlos Alvarez was jam-packed full of knowledge bombs. So much that we could not fit it into one episode. Tune in next week where we continue our conversation with Carlos, talking about trends within the e-commerce industry, neatest networking event that I've ever heard of. Before you go, we wanted to share a new service that Ken and I have been using called Getita that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida.com, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?